In English class, we were reading a book called In the Heart of the Sea, written by Nat Philbrook, a very famed Nantucket author. He wrote the book and briefly touched base upon something that struck my eye. An accent. A Nantucket accent. When I heard about the Nantucket accent, my curiosity was piqued. I felt as though there was a part of myself that was missing. A lost chapter in a story that was being written. What was this accent? What did it sound like? Where did it come from? What phrases did it use? What happened to it? And what does that mean?
The accent, one of the first people I met out here was Clinton Andrews, who born and raised on the island, lived his whole life, and had a very strong, like the rest of his family, a very strong old New England accent. It was a very old Nantucket accent, but you could very easily think you were down east along the coast of Maine, or even getting towards Nova Scotia.
I don't know what happened to my accent. I moved out to the West Coast in the late 70s, and I was out there for 15 years, so that could have done my accent, or made it go away.
So you had the accent and then you lost it,
I think so. I think I had my own little Nantucket twang. I can't remember just what it was. I can't even slip back into it anymore. Unless I'm hanging around with a bunch of Nantucketers, you might start saying going fishing and going bowling or whatever it was we were doing. Mostly dropping the G and...
I mean, we don't really have a Nantucket accent in my family. That's interesting, you know. My dad's from here, I'm from here, my brother's from here. My mom is from Holden, Western Massachusetts. Not an accent in the family.
There's a lot of terminology on Nantucket, as you'd see elsewhere along the coast of New England, that is nautical based, that we're not even aware of it as we're saying it. People use ahead. You're going port and starboard, or heading aft. You'll often hear people say in just normal speech. Lesser known ones come from the same place, like stick in the mud actually comes from boats, from nautical usage.
Well, there's a lot of nautical terms that just naturally got adopted. And like he's all at sea or something like that. Yeah. He doesn't have both oars in the water. That's tantamount to saying his elevator doesn't go all the way up. Or it's got 6 cookies to the dozen.
What was that last one, sorry?
6 cookies to the dozen.
One, I think, was your grandmother, Mrs. Allen. She asked me about, or mentioned some kind of nice. Then, not too long ago, just a few days ago, I talked to a lady who was reminding me of a good friend of ours who's passed away. And his thing was chicken today and feathers tomorrow.
Not specifically. They would say some a lot, like that was some thunderstorm, or lots, like instead of a lot of real estate, it would be lots of fish, or lots of something, or for Christ's sake. I don't know where for Christ's sake came from, but I've heard that a lot.
The actual vocabulary is going to reflect very much how they live, how they make a living. As you mentioned, so much is nautical based, clearly being an island, but that shows how your speech, the dialogue, is very much tied into the people themselves. And it is important. I think it provides a very strong sense of self. Soon we'll all sound like the exact same sitcom on television everywhere in the world, unless there is that regional difference. I think MTV has an awful lot to answer for in changing the speech patterns and vocabulary of us as we grow up. A lot of people talk like they're from California or an inner city, even though they're growing up in the White Mountains or on Nantucket. Regional dialect is a very intimate part of a people.
I think the decline of like a specific accent is just because so many people have moved around and changed a lot. When I was growing up here in the 60s, I think there were 3,500 residents. Now there are close to 12,000. We have 50,000 visitors in Nantucket alone. People have moved all around the country to different areas. I think if you look at many places in the country, the accents are getting kind of watered down, not in a bad way, but it's just part of how things change.
We got accents of all ethnic groups, in Nantucket today, and always has been, as far as I know. People from all over the world come here, so.
We're certainly becoming a more global society in the big picture, and in some ways more homogenous linguistically, perhaps. You see a lot of that with regional accents as well. People coming from the south who don't necessarily have a southern accent. It's kind of, and I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. I mean, maybe it's both.
Yeah, I don't know about accents. I think they're going to get watered down, and that's probably not a bad thing as we get to know other cultures and other people from other neighborhoods. I grew up not liking people from the vineyard. I didn't know anyone from the vineyard. I'd never been to the vineyard, but they were different from us. Turns out they're not that different from us. I think their accent was similar, and they got the same kind of life we have here. And now we're learning to realize people from the vineyard are just fine, like people from the mainland are fine, or people from foreign countries. So let's get to know other people, let's speak their languages, let's not be so specific in exactly who we are and why we're that way.